When I went to interview Dr. Anthony Bach about death, he shared this story about an email he got from a patient. They had just wrapped up a study on people with metastatic cancer who were dealing with depression and anxiety about their diagnosis. And this patient was describing the experience he had.
And he said, I felt like a billion colors, and I went to the bathroom and I realized I could pee jellyfish. The toilet was full of jellyfish, and they were moving in harmony, and they were so beautiful, and I had no idea the mind could do that.
Clearly, this was not the average research study, and these were not usual results. Bach's study was testing whether psychedelic drugs, in this case psilocybin, the active ingredient in hallucinogenic mushrooms, could help patients manage their stress and their fear of death. This participant summed it up like this.
He said, I was angry at my cancer and I wanted to yell and scream in it, and I realized, actually, I just had to forgive it. So I forgave my cancer and loved it. And I will tell you, as a medical oncologist practicing for like decades, I'd never heard that before.
Bach is a professor and a palliative care doctor at the University of Washington. But over the last few years, he's shifted his focus to the new field of psychedelic-assisted therapy. Psychedelics are still mostly illegal and treated as dangerous recreational drugs. But there's a growing pile of research showing these drugs can have a profound effect on people experiencing depression, addiction, PTSD, often after just a single dose. I wanted to know what he found so compelling about the research that it changed the trajectory of his career and even how he thinks about the end of his own life. I'm Gabriel Spitzer, and this is KUOW's Pocket Science, a podcast about the fascinating, weird, groundbreaking science happening in the Pacific Northwest and the human beings working to figure it out. Today, how do psychedelics affect the brain so powerfully, and what can they teach us about confronting death? For Tony Bach, the story starts back in college, when he was studying humanities at Stanford.
I was a sophomore, and my mother, who had been dealing with a pre-leukemia kind of cancer, a blood cancer, died while I was a sophomore. And so that really threw me. I mean, it really made me think about, what am I doing here? What do I want to study? And so I made a big career change and entered this new field that was developing, which was palliative care.
Palliative care is about relieving suffering rather than curing somebody. It's usually for people who are seriously or terminally ill. Bach trained to bring those skills to patients with cancer.
I became an oncologist right at the time when the number of treatments exploded, and there were so many different things we could do. And yet what I saw is that the technology is running away with us and we're losing sight of the person.
That stuck with him in his first years treating patients. And he was never quite satisfied with the tools he had for helping those patients cope emotionally.
So I remember one woman, a mother, terrible cancer, and she was like, who's going to take care of my kids? And I was a doctor, of course, and it wasn't a doctorly question. It was kind of an existential question. And I was like, wow, I have no idea. I don't know what to say to that. And that was the beginning of me thinking, you know what, I need something better.
Then around 2016, Bach heard about some of the early studies that tested psilocybin, the chemical in magic mushrooms, on people with cancer. Now, the idea wasn't to treat their cancer, but to help the patients process what was happening to them and to find a way to deal with the scary prospect of dying.
The results in those early studies are dramatic. People's anxiety dropped right away. And, I hadn't seen anything like that. Like, regular therapy doesn't do that. It doesn't work that fast. It's not that dramatic. And of course, I had heard of psychedelics when I was in college, but of course I had been too much of a nerd and too scared to try any of that. So I had never done anything. I hadn't smoked pot. And it seemed like the kind of thing where you have to do it to understand what's happening. And so that's what led me to arrange my own experience.
Bach decided to undergo psychedelic-assisted therapy himself.
I was a little curious and I was a little nervous. I had gone in with the intention of understanding my own orientation towards death and my own left over all those feelings and things from my mother's death, and I felt like having more clarity about that would bring something else into my practice in the way I work with people who are dealing with their own cancer.
Could you tell me this story of the experience?
Yeah. So it turns out in my trip, I was in a cozy little apartment. The guide was with me. I took the mushrooms with a little bit of chocolate and laid down, and I immediately dropped into this other place. It was like a door had opened, and I was like, whoa. I saw some of the important women in my life. I could see their faces come past, and then my whole body just jolted. Like I had these big jolts, and it was like energy. It was really big. And then it happened again. And then I would think, well, okay, this is trying to tell me something. And then that would happen again. And I realized that was going on, is that somebody was trying to teach me something about thinking too much and thinking all the time. This is not something you're going to be able to figure out with your analytical mind. You are just going to have to listen to your body and be in your body and feel this. It was deep calm. It was like a level of absorption and kind of feeling connected with everything, that oceanic feeling that I had not quite experienced before, even in the middle of a long meditation retreat. And so I thought, wow, there is something really to this.
This seems like a good place to kind of step back a little bit and talk about what we know, or we think we know, or we're learning about what these medicines do in the brain. Where would you start that explanation?
I think a place to start is that one of the things that a psychedelic like psilocybin does is it works on all the assumptions and beliefs we have about how the world works and about how I work in the world. So these kinds of beliefs that the neuroscientists would call top-down beliefs, because they're cognitive beliefs that you hold and reinforce, and you see the world through those beliefs. What psilocybin does is it relaxes all those top-down beliefs so that you don't hold them so rigidly. People feel boxed in, and then they get really anxious about that, right? Like, I'm stuck, nothing's going to help me, I'm just going to be like this forever. And all those, cycles of thinking get disrupted and opened up for some new ways of thinking to become possible.
What's our best understanding of the kind of neurological basis for that, how that plays out in your brain?
Yeah, so what's happening, from the neuroscientist point of view, is that the psilocybin is binding to serotonin receptors on all your little brain cells. That changes how they signal each other. That changes the kinds of network connections that create these patterns of thought. And all that it's like a way of giving your brain a big reset.
Habits of thought show up like circuits in the brain, neurons triggering one another to fire in a certain pattern. Scientists think that psychedelics can nudge your brain to form new connections in ways that disrupt those patterns and potentially lay down newer, healthier ones. It's the kind of thing that comes really easy to little kids whose brains develop during these critical periods where they can learn and adapt really quickly. As adults, we typically lose that kind of plasticity.
It seems clear that psychedelics open up these critical periods of learning, at least for a while after the psychedelic. So people can actually learn new ways of living with their emotions, of having emotions, of responding to other people. And that turns out to be one of the most powerful ways in which that leads to behavior change.
That could be at the heart of why psychedelics have been shown to help people deal with trauma, for example, or intrusive anxiety. It's like they can take these thought patterns that lead them to spiral and feel out of control and edit them. Bach says that made him think of his own patients, who aren't just dealing with the grinding physical ordeal of being sick. They're also scared and anxious and depressed and sometimes even ashamed.
And so that gave me a clue about coming back to cancer, about trying to work with people who have all these beliefs about, how they got cancer. I wasn't good enough. I didn't do this. Since my cancer's come back, it means I must be doing something wrong. All those kinds of things that really cause a lot of suffering. I started to wonder about whether or not those kinds of attitudes could be shifted.
Because again, those are top-down kinds of thoughts, right? Those are thoughts that originate in the ego.
Those are examples of the kinds of top-down thinking that can just become habits and start to tie us up into knots.
For Bach's first research project on psychedelics, he enrolled doctors and nurses who were dealing with depression, anxiety, and PTSD after working on the front lines during the COVID pandemic. The results were encouraging. People who took psilocybin saw their depression symptoms go down significantly, much more than people given a placebo. Then Bach started working on a new study, this one on people with metastatic cancer who have symptoms of depression and anxiety. The guy who wrote the email about forgiving his cancer, he would later enroll in it. This time, Bach wanted the study to feel less like a medical treatment and more like a ritual or a rite of passage.
That really inspired me to create that kind of setting for people with cancer, where they'd be coming not in another medical center visit, to be in a place where they could be in touch with another group of their peers, could be in a natural setting. And I felt like that could give everybody a really rich setting in which to have an experience with psilocybin.
Bach arranged to do the study at a retreat center on Whidbey Island that had experience hosting cancer patients. He organized all the medical stuff ahead of time, making sure that people could manage their cancer meds, setting up systems to monitor vital signs. So by the time the patients arrived, they could focus on the experience.
We arranged this so it would be as little like a medical procedure as possible. I wanted it to be kind of a healing ceremony, where you come, you talk about what you're up against, people listen to you, you don't get therapized.
52 people enrolled in the study, and over the course of several months, they showed up in cohorts of 5 to 8 for a series of 3-day retreats. On day 2, they would get their psilocybin.
They take their medicine all together with a little tea. They lie down. They listen to a curated playlist of music. They have the facilitators around in case they have a question or something's happening or they want somebody to just sit next to them. The psilocybin's peak effect is from about hour 2 to about hour 4. And that's when the experience is most intense. It turns out people can still get up and go to the bathroom. If you come by and put your hand on their arm and say, hey, how are you doing? They can answer you. So they're not incapacitated, but they are in a different place. And then gradually they come back down to earth. We call it kind of takeoff and landing. And then you just hang out and look at the mountains and the trees and in some cases, talk to the trees and hear them talking back to you.
After the landing, patients had talk therapy sessions to go deeper into their journeys. The researchers call this integration, and it's designed to reinforce any therapeutic effects of the psilocybin. As far as measuring those effects, the study could tell us some things, but it was really designed to test whether this off-site group therapy model is safe, not how well the medicine worked. Still, Bach says the data points they do have are encouraging, and in some cases, kind of jaw-dropping.
We did measure symptoms of anxiety and depression, and those did go down for the whole group to about the same degree as in the randomized studies where half the people got psilocybin, half the people got something else that were done in an individual setting.
There was another thing that Bach was wondering whether he would see in this study. Previous research shows that people who had psychedelic-assisted therapy tended to rate it as one of the most meaningful and spiritually significant experiences of their lives. It turns out he did see that in his study subjects. Like the patients who say while they were on psilocybin, they experienced their own deaths.
They have the experience of what is it going to be like when there's no me here anymore? And that can really change everything. One of the people we were checking on everybody an hour after they took their pill. And so, we'd go around and like whisper to each people, how are you doing? And, one of the people said, Melinda, that was her name. And she said, Melinda, she's gone. I mean, it was really that profound of a loss of sense of self. And she had this experience where she was like, this is what it's like if there's no me. And actually, it's okay. I don't know what it is that's out here, but there's something else out here. And so actually, it really shifted her level of anxiety about what it meant to be up against that.
Maybe it's not that surprising that a person actively tripping on mushrooms feels like they have this new cosmic perspective. But one of the remarkable things about psychedelic research is that the benefits seem to last. Studies in people with major depression have found that patients report feeling the therapeutic effects up to a year later. It seems like giving the brain that reset, disrupting unhealthy patterns and rewiring to form new ones, can help some people reframe the whole ordeal that they're going through.
I had another guy who, in his psilocybin trip, he asked for a piece of moss. Moss. So I would have gotten him a really little piece of moss. Well, the person who brought the moss brought him like a football-sized piece of moss. He put it on his chest and he laid there with his fingers in it for like half an hour, and then he asked for a rock. Like I would have gotten him a little rock, right? The facilitator got him a really big rock. It was really smooth. And he put it next to his cheek, and he laid there for like an hour with one hand on the rock and one hand on the moss. And then afterwards he said, I realized I'm a man of the earth. I came from this earth, and I am going to return to this earth. And it turns out he passed away not too long ago, and that's what he said. Right up until the end, I am a man of the earth. He did not forget that. And I can't help but think that it changed the way he approached what happens at the end of your life with cancer.
Bach is already planning follow-up studies to nail down what the best dose is, and eventually to set up a randomized controlled trial of that group therapy model. Meanwhile, researchers are exploring how psychedelics might help people with other mental health problems, and even illnesses like chronic pain and seizures. The number of new clinical trials approved by the FDA has shot up from just 2 a decade ago to 36 approved last year. That reflects some big shifts in attitudes about these drugs, which are still tightly regulated as Schedule I controlled substances. A recent order by the Trump administration could loosen those rules as the government starts to catch up with the surge in public interest. And Bach says the science is still trying to keep up with the hype, too.
Psychedelics are definitely in this is the new cool thing cycle of scientific news in the world, right? I feel like every new treatment goes through the cycle of it's the greatest thing since whatever, then it's the most terrible thing since whatever, and then it kind of evens out to, well, it's good for some things and not good for some other things. And so I'm looking forward to the day when people start to have a balanced view of what's happening.
But Bach says it also makes sense that these medicines are generating buzz. No pun intended.
This is happening as a scientific advance now at a moment when mental health is a challenge like it's never been in our country, and many regular people are totally frustrated. Everyone agrees that the system is totally broken, and so I think that's amplified.
Meanwhile, Tony Bach says he'll continue working to fill out the science behind these medicines, and emerging, he hopes, with a new tool to help people confront the universal human predicament of mortality. You've been listening to Pocket Science from KUOW in Seattle. I'm Gabriel Spitzer. This podcast was edited by Jim Gates and produced by Shane Mailing. Music by Blue Dot Sessions and MusicBed. If you enjoyed Pocket Science, tell a friend or write us a review. It really helps a lot. And you can support our podcast by visiting kuow.org/pocket. See you in 2 weeks for another episode of Pocket Science.